it's Laura from Divine Light Yoga. This week I taught what I would consider to be one of the most challenging classes of my entire 24 years of working with children. And the main reason I would say that it was challenging was that I was doing it not in my first language. So it was the first time I've ever taught a class in Spanish. And a lot of the children in the class, it was mixed ages, and a lot of them had different complex needs, a lot of emotional, mental, social support needed. And I was trying to deliver that through Spanish, which, whilst I speak a decent level of Spanish and I can absolutely lead the class in it, it does take me my brain a little moment to click into place sometimes and to fully understand what the children are saying. And because it was such a mixed age group, they had a lot of needs, there was a lot of overexcitement and hyperactivity, overstimulation prior to them coming into the class. So they'd had an hour on the football field where they were all running around. It was predominantly boys in the class. And so there was a lot of overexcitement, and it just felt quite chaotic, to be honest. And it's the first time in many, many, many years where I felt that. And so there are lots of different elements that made it challenging. But just like I teach everyone who comes on my trainings, you've got to reflect on this and you've got to move forward from it. And that is exactly what I did. So I did learn a lot from it, and I got a lot of motivation from it. At the time, my priority was honestly regulating myself so that I could support the children to regulate themselves. But it really felt like a lot of the usual tricks and techniques that I used didn't work. And that was quite a shock for me. I am very good at engaging the children no matter what the age in these, quick self-regulation techniques, so that I can get them all focused, get them grounded, and then we can really move forward from there. And so it was a real shock that my usual tricks I was pulling out of the bag weren't actually working. And it did give me a lot of empathy and a deeper level of understanding for all of those new kids yoga teachers, or, honestly, if you've been teaching for a long time and you've just got quite a difficult group, or if you're teaching in a language that is not your first language. It is so much more difficult than teaching in your native language. So I really learned a lot, but my biggest takeaway was that, I started the class, I could see they were overstimulated, and so I was like, right, we just need to get them breathing. We need to release some of this energy and overexcitement. And what I found was that they just didn't participate. So I can do it, I can make it engaging, I can make it fun, I can make it funny, I can say it in English or say it in Spanish, or even just not say it at all and just do it. But if they do not participate in the breathing technique, then it's not going to regulate their nervous system. So that was a bit of a shock for me. So what I did is I took 3 breaths to myself, because honestly I needed it in order to regulate myself. Because what you might find as a teacher is that when the children are really overstimulated, even if it's just a couple, the rest of the group tend to get overstimulated, and then as the teacher tends to get overwhelmed and overstimulated, and everybody's just in this really hyperactive, overstimulated, overwhelmed zone. So I knew that it was really important for me to regulate myself, which I knew I could do with just 2 breaths. And those children that wanted to join me with those 2 and 3 breaths, it really helped them. But still, it was a lot of overstimulation. And so I tried a few different techniques. You need to know when to move on. Try something, doesn't work. Try something, doesn't work. And this was not about getting them to do yoga or getting them to relax even. It was getting them to move their nervous system from really overwhelmed and overstimulated to a place that is healthier for them. And so I noticed that the manager of the nonprofit that we were working with, The irony of this is that it was during my teacher training and it was like a model class, but it was not at all. But this is real life. But the owner of the nonprofit that we were working with had said before the class, oh, they really love to draw. And I always have pens and paper, always, always, always in my bag when I'm doing a kids yoga class, because it is such a great go-to. If they don't want to verbalize, or they're finding it difficult to verbalize their feelings, their thoughts, their ideas, if they just need a little bit of time by themselves, or if they're just not really willing to participate, I always just bring out the art, super simple art. And so since things weren't really working and I was not getting them to be able to do these breathing techniques to regulate themselves, I brought out the pens and pencils and the paper. And instantly, they lie on their bellies, they get the pencil, and I'm guiding them to create a mandala. And whether they're listening to me or not, the guidance, it doesn't really matter, because what is most important is that the children were more focused. They were able to cool and calm themselves down. And like you could really feel the energy starting to slow down, but you could see that they started to move from overstimulated, overwhelmed, hyperactive, this real almost like fight or flight mode, into cooling, calming, starting to relax. And that was great that worked, and I was very happy. And we tried to do, some games and some partner yoga, and that just kind of got them overstimulated again. So, just come back to the mandala art meditations. And that is what this group needed at the time. And after the class, I did feel really overstimulated myself. So I went home and did some yoga. I felt a little bit disheartened, to be honest. I'm always very honest. I did feel disheartened, because I thought, oh man, these techniques that I've been teaching for like over 10 years and been teaching other people to use, sometimes they don't work. Sometimes the breathing techniques don't work. Not because the breathing techniques don't work, but if the kids don't engage in them and they don't participate in them, then they don't work. But then I realized, what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what works, because the drawing did work. Okay? So for that group at that time, the breathing techniques weren't working because they didn't want to engage in them. But they were very happy to engage in the drawing activity, in the mandala activity. And some of them weren't doing mandalas, and that's totally fine. But they were drawing, they were focused, they were relaxing, and that is what was important. So it just made me realize, it doesn't matter whether you're helping children with their self-regulation skills and helping them to get focused and relaxed through yoga or mindfulness or breathing or art or music or storytelling. It is whatever works for them on that day. And that was definitely one big lesson that I learned. It doesn't have to be through traditional yoga. It can be through some of these other different means, and I am a big fan of, play therapy, art therapy, music therapy for sure. And so going forward, the next class and all the classes that followed this week, we started with drawing. We started with some sort of art activity. One week we did it on one day we did it on rocks. Another day we did it on paper and card. And that's how we started the class. And because I knew, okay, they really respond very well to this, and that is going to help them feel grounded, feel settled, and just kind of come into the space. So then maybe they are ready for movement. And some days they weren't. The movement made them super overstimulated again, and then we just came back to the drawing. And while we were drawing, I had the mantras on, and we were singing the mantras, and we were reminding each other to breathe. And so it's just integrating those self-regulation techniques that they can use at home, whilst they're doing something that does help them relax and focus. So for some it's movement, for some it's art, for some it's music. You do whatever the children need to do. Definitely you have to let go of your plan. I've always been a fan of, plan it, feel organized, have your resources, but you go in there and you see what the children need on the day, and then you go with that. Because if you're trying to force something that their nervous system and their brain and their mind is not ready for or not able to do on that day, then there's just a lot of conflict, and they feel disconnected from you, and it just feels very unsafe and disorganized. So yeah, I mean, definitely I'm motivated to keep learning Spanish for sure. And it's a great lesson, and honestly, it doesn't matter how long you've been teaching for, and I know those of you that are watching this who've been teaching for 20 or 30 years, I am sure you will say the same. You are always learning from the children. You are always the student as much as you are the teacher, and it's important to keep that in mind, because they will always teach us new lessons. And if you want to be the best teacher that you can be, you have to listen to the children and you have to get their feedback. And sometimes they're not giving you that feedback by sitting down saying, hey, Miss Laura, I liked this, I didn't like this. Sometimes they are showing you what they need and what their feedback is with their behavior. And sometimes they can't control that. And it's just our responsibility to find a way to best support them. So that was my lessons. I mean, definitely I learned more than that, but yeah, I would always encourage you, when you've had a difficult class, to really listen to the children, listen to what they're doing, listen to see what they're doing, see their behavior. Don't keep going with the same technique if it's not working. Move on. Pens and paper are your friends. They are such a good way to instantly regulate children, help them calm down, get focused, and stop them from kind of running around and potentially just hyping themselves up more, but also potentially being, causing danger or being unsafe. It's not just about being disruptive. Always reflect on your classes, think about how you can move forward, and then try something different. Yeah. So hopefully that has been useful to you. And if you are interested in training with me, and you get to see all these different types of classes and experience different groups of children, but also on my trainings, I do teach different modalities. So we do talk about storytelling, music, mantras, different ways of moving, getting them to dance, getting, the many different techniques of how to physically get them to the ground and engage them and help them to relax. And I'm just very thankful that I actually have all of those different modalities and techniques and ideas in the back of my mind. So when the breathing isn't working and the movement isn't working, I know exactly what to do and can best support the children. So if you are interested, I have 2 more trainings coming up this year. One in Hong Kong, that is next month, and one in Singapore, that is in July. And I would love to see you there, in 2 of my favorite cities in the whole world. And I always get great groups in these 2 cities. So if you're interested, then DM me and I'll send you the details.